Hi, welcome back to another episode of Professional Roundtable. Hi, welcome back to another episode of Professional Roundtables with Arrows Education. And today we have the privilege of having Captain Awesome with us. Captain Awesome is quite prominent and famous YouTuber here in Malaysia. We love him. We love his personality. And today we are privileged to interview him to hear his story and how he started on his journey of being a content creator. And I think a lot of students are like really excited about content creation. I think a lot more people are talking about how they want to be a YouTuber. And so today we want to explore this particular career and what's it mean and what are some of the realities. But before we go on, we'd like to introduce you to Arrows Education if this is the first time here. And if you can have the slides up, Arrows Education is an education consultancy and agency. Our goal is to help you realize your dream of studying abroad. And our services covers over 30 over countries around the globe, and we are partners with over 2,500 institutions offering thousands of courses in all fields, from K-12 to PhD. As long as you want it and you dream it, come and look for us because we are the most affordable support services that you can find on the market. And we are here to help you realize your dream of studying abroad. So how do you start? Visit our website on arrowstransactions.com. Fill up the application form, upload all your transcripts and all your examination results. Reach out to us on Arrows, or we'll reach out to you on WhatsApp. And if an offer is given to you, pay up all the application fee, apply and receive your offer letter, and we'll handle your visa application to prepare for your travel. And as you arrive there, we will also have people to receive you. So all in one package, all services included. And so visit us on all our social media account, on our website, on Instagram, Arrows Education, on Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, or reach out to us on WhatsApp. With that, such a privilege to see Captain Awesome with us today. Is in his bright orange and just what a refreshing look on him and his big smile as well. Good to have you on board, Captain Awesome.
Thank you. It's good to be here. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, it is. It is indeed a pleasure, and you're the first YouTuber that we really have on board, and we always interview engineers and all these lecturers and all these professionals, and sometimes we feel like, hey, we're doing this on YouTube, and it would be good to actually have some real YouTuber on the show with us.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, to begin with, why don't you tell us a little bit about you and what's your education like and what are some of the things interesting that's about you? Yeah.
Yes. So, for me, can we pull up the slides, please?
Yeah. We saw briefly on your presentation. It's so interesting. Wow.
Yes. So here it's called becoming awesome because for me I really do believe in the power of narratives because
Hmm.
almost every single thing in life, every single thing you see with your eyes is something that was created by someone who is not very
Hmm.
much smarter than you, right? And everything is about story, right? And I make YouTube videos and all I'm doing is like telling stories about different products and all of that. But in our everyday lives as well, there are stories we tell ourselves and there's things we tell ourselves, I am this kind of a person or I'm that kind of a person. And in fact, I'm Captain Awesome. Like how do you even become Captain Awesome, right? So all of these things are, teaser of what we're going to be getting into here today. Now, for me, well, we all have a start, and definitely this is what you're asking me, how I got started. And, I got started, for people who don't know, I grew up in the middle of nowhere in a village, in Nigeria, we call it, well, I would say village so that everybody understands. Here in Malaysia, it's a kampong. But basically, what it means is I literally grew up in the middle of nowhere. And, I grew up with a single mom, so I did not really have as much exposure. It was just me, my mom, and my sister, and that was it. But I've always been someone who has always been in my head, and we'll come to it later when I talk about my neurodivergence, which is, I'm diagnosed with ADHD and autism. But at the time, there was no way I could know, right? So all I knew was that I liked being in my head all the time, and I'm always thinking of all this stuff. But obviously, being in the middle of nowhere where you have no exposure to anything, you can't really do
Hmm.
anything about it. So I remember back, I would literally just walk
Right.
into the farm. So we had a farm, and I would just talk to the plants
Hmm.
because I was so like very shy that I couldn't talk to people. So I would talk to the plants, and that was how I practiced talking, and that was how I practiced any kind of creation. Like I remember there was a time I had a presentation in church, and I would stand in front of all like the corn and all the tomatoes and all the yams, and I would talk to them about the presentation, and my hand would be cold, and I'll be shaking and shivering. That was my first exposure to like creation. So yeah, does that cover your question?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That itself it's like you have so much idea and you're bursting out, and creativity just comes naturally to you, and I think that's yeah, like your name suggests, really awesome. And you're creating
Yes,
awesome
sir.
content for us. Yeah. And so obviously you didn't end up being a YouTuber like at a snap of the finger. What are some of the journeys that you have taken to land you here? Like was there a course that you could do? Did you go to university, and things like that? Yeah.
Right. So that's a very great question. And I would say it was actually not a very linear path, right? So when I was in high school,
Mm.
obviously, like, everybody wants to, be a doctor. And I mean, fortunately or unfortunately for me, my mom was a doctor. She still is a doctor. So there was that expectation that I was just going to become a doctor, a medical doctor. And
Hmm.
because of that, I think growing up, I was not really given a lot of space, especially when it comes to creativity or becoming anything other than what I'm supposed to be, right? And I remember before I went to university, because I did, first try to go to university in Nigeria. So on screen right now is actually photos of me in university. This was my matriculation day. That was a photo of me on my matriculation day in university. And I've always been someone who has, ever since I was young, I've been obsessed with like taking photos. So in fact, the photo at the top right there is actually like my admission email that I got from like, when you go to the website and you enter your number and they tell you if you're admitted or not. But I remember before even university, I decided not to go to university. So when I finished high school, the first 3 years after high school,
Mm.
mind you, I had already repeated my second to last class in high school because I just couldn't focus. And again, we'll come back to that when it comes to neurodivergence later. But I'd already repeated, so technically I was 1 year behind in my school. And then after I came out of high school, I realized that the world was changing. This was 2008, 2008, 2009. And at that stage, I'd already been, mostly messing about. Again, you'll find this theme a lot where I'm just like doing something that has no purpose, or that's how it looks in the moment, right? Like, because, my mom is like, you have to study, you have to make sure you get into the best universities. And instead of doing that, I'll just be on the internet on her laptop, just internet or going to the cyber cafes and blowing all my money there and just surfing the internet. If you ask me, what are you doing on the internet? Even I don't know, right? But I think everything all
Yeah.
came together when I went to university. And on getting to university, I kind of realized very early on that it wasn't quite for me because I had already, I got into university in Nigeria for computer science. This was a computer science hall. You can see the photos here. But I realized very quickly that I was actually a little bit ahead because I had been doing so many things outside, in the 3 years that I was outside, not in university, where all my mates, according to, everybody, they had already been in their third year or their final year. But because I was messing about, by the time I eventually got into university, I was so far ahead. I had already learned so much. I went in for computer science, but I was already doing like even higher programming languages that it just didn't
Hmm.
work. And at that stage, people had been coming to me every time. They asked me, hey, how do I do this? How do I do that? And I kind of got tired of always telling them, this is how you do it. So I said, you know what? I'm just going to create a blog. So that was my first exposure to content creation, right? I created a free blog on Blogspot and I just wrote there. And I say, hey, I will send you the link. Go and read up about it on your own time. Don't disturb me. But everything, as with everything, the seeds, you don't know the end from the beginning, and you don't know the beginning from the end. All you just know is how to do your best. And I think for me, that's just the story of where it's like, oh wow, I never actually considered that this would be anything. But then the more I kept doing it, the more I kept getting into these places. And everybody talks about luck all the time, right? Like, you're lucky, or but I found that as someone who comes from a village in the middle of nowhere, I find that you can actually engineer your luck. Like, luck is not as random as many people think it is, right? Even being on this talk right now is not luck. It's literally me seeing Dr. Bossade like one morning after my run outside my condo, and she and her husband were there, and I spoke to them, and that's how I am here today, right? So for me, I've never believed in, like, just there's nothing I can do. And the more I kept doing things in Nigeria, the more I kept writing on my blog, I kept sharing it. I started getting people contacting me from all over Nigeria, telling me that, hey, can you write for my blog? Can you do this? And before you knew it, I was going to events. So some of the photos you can see here are from when Google Plus launched in Nigeria in 2010. And I'm a YouTuber today. And again, like I say, you don't know the end from the beginning. And I actually went to the launch of YouTube Nigeria in 2011 without even knowing that I'll
Wow.
ever be a YouTuber. So that's some of the photos here. And some of the photos here, at the time I was a developer, at least I was becoming a developer. So I used to go to, Nokia. I'm not sure if anybody is old enough to remember
Ah,
Nokia in the audience, but we remember Nokia.
yeah. At least these two are old enough to know what
Exactly.
Nokia
So we
is.
definitely
Yeah.
remember Nokia. So Nokia at the time had just come into Nigeria in 2010. So I would go to all of the developer conferences. I would speak to so many of the people. And much like what I'm doing right now, which is, talking to people. One of the things that I also benefited a lot from was, the gentleman in the second photo from the left there, where he was Shino Oyetosho. He's at the time he was the head of Microsoft Middle East and North Africa, I believe. And it was so mind blowing to see a Nigerian
Wow.
in 2010 being the head of Microsoft, like the entire region. I think for me, that just confirmed, as a village boy, uh, just confirmed to me that,
Mhm.
wow, these people really don't have two heads. They have one head like me. And here was how I was gone to university. I had gone to university. I didn't really like it, so I had left university. But the more I kept seeing
Mhm.
this, the more it just gave me confidence that even though, again, I didn't know where I was going or where I was heading, I just kept doing things. And I think it's one of the things that I would encourage people in the audience today is that, whether it's for your studies, and, we'll get to studies, and eventually when I came to Malaysia, much like what you do at Arrow's education here, I also had that opportunity to travel outside Nigeria. And, I'm not going to skip ahead. So I'm just going to take a pause here and say, does that answer your question?
Yeah. 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 I mean, that is that's a great story of like just trying to figure out what
Yeah.
works for you. Cause being in your head and being the like so
Yeah.
uniquely you, you were able to carve out a path that although it's different from others, but
Yeah.
actually works for you. And I think this should set as an encouragement and a reminder that not there's no template for life. There's no template for what we do, and I think it would be quite fatally flawed as a thinking process to try to fit everyone
Yeah.
into a template. And I think it's a cautionary tale for us maybe, to actually try to think, to allow ourselves to
Yeah.
think outside the box and try something different. And in your case, you're just struggling in school, and you're struggling to learn like the rest of them, because you're
Yeah.
thinking differently, and you figure out ways that of learning
Yeah.
that suits you a lot.
Okay,
Yeah.
I think before we go further, I would like to look at things from the perspective of the parents.
Yeah.
Yeah, because yes, it's fantastic to have to have time to figure things out, to run around and do this and that until things fall in place. But I am very sure that your mom didn't find it funny when you were doing all of that.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
Not at
So
all.
I'd like you to speak to that so that
Yeah.
I want us to balance things. Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
sure.
for sure.
I want you to speak to our frustrations and
Yeah.
how that panned out. Yeah.
So I think frustration is the right word, because my mom was, I would say, for the better part of 20 years, extremely frustrated, because here was this kid who is extremely stubborn, who does what he wants. And even though, my mom would, at that stage, she would beat me, or she would, restrict me and say, oh, you're not going to go out, you're not going to go. I would sneak out from home, right? Not to even go do any, truancy or anything, but literally just to go to an event, because I was 16 years old, and, I started this at like, I think 13, 14 years old in Nigeria. So imagine like my mom scared this Kampong boy getting on a bus for 7 hours. She was a doctor, she was working, and I don't know how long she was working so hard to make sure that my sister and I were doing well. So I definitely see it from her point of view as well. And I think the mind blowing thing is that at the time, I saw it from her perspective, but obviously I did not have as eloquent as I am of an argument right now. And I think even then there's this thing with parents also where, especially in Nigeria, where we don't really trust our children. We just tell them what to do. Hey, for example, my mom, she wanted me to be a doctor, so you're going to be a doctor. You have no choice in the matter. And I think for me, being the son of a doctor, seeing my mom's life up close and personal, I kind of realized that I don't think this life is for me, man. Like seeing the long hours and seeing her, how hard she worked and everything. And for me, I'm not against working hard and everything, but I've just always believed that, there's a proverb that says that instead of, using on sharp axe to cut a tree, you spend all the time sharpening your axe or something like that, right? Where it's like, preparation is everything, right? Like if you're prepared, confidence comes from preparation, right? Confidence, you cannot fake confidence, because if you have actually done the work and if you've actually done the things you're supposed to do, there's a lot of confidence. But for my mom, even at the time, even if I tried to convince her, she just couldn't. And I think one of the things I realized very early on was that and is what I would also, the advice I would give is show, don't tell. Right, so that means that your parents, as you will learn, the older you get, is that your parents are also stakeholders. As much as when you grow older, when you go to university, your teachers are stakeholders. Your boss is a stakeholder when you start working. If you're in a relationship, for example, your partner is a stakeholder. So you start thinking in terms of, hey, if I want to get what I want, how do I actually, show them that I am capable of doing this? And you cannot tell them. So for me, I think it was in doing the little things. So for example, my blog, for the longest time, my mom just thought I was wasting my time, burning her money on her laptop and buying internet. And at that time, internet subscriptions were really expensive in Nigeria. This was 2007, 2008. But instead of telling her, the only thing I did was one day I came up to her and I said, Mom, I need your help. She said, what do you need? I said, well, I need to open a bank account. I was like 17 years old, 16 turning 17. She was shocked. She was like, what do you mean open a bank account? I said, well, because my blog has actually qualified for Google AdSense, which is the monetization program that Google offers if they run ads on your blog. And right now, I cannot open a bank account on my own. And the bank account I needed was not even a normal bank account. It was a domiciliary account. For those who don't know, a domiciliary account is a foreign currency account, which means that if you're in Malaysia, for example, and you're spending ringgit Malaysia and you need to receive US dollars, at the time you needed a US dollar account. So that's what a domiciliary account is, right? So my mom was like, what is all of this? And then I explained to her that, oh, actually, this is my blog that, I've been doing for the past, I think at that stage it was 4 years. I've actually started, I've qualified to make money from it. And she didn't believe it, but she followed me there. She did it, but she still had that doubt in her eyes. And eventually I remember the first time we went to the post office box in Yaba, in Lagos State, Sabo Yaba, to go get my check. And I showed her. She was so like mind blown. And I think that was the first time that she really understood that, wait, okay, maybe this boy is onto something. And I could see the change in how, she allowed me to go to events now from then on, though, I would still under supervision. And I think that's the advice I would say, is that instead of trying to only tell your parents that, this is what I want to do, this is what I want to do, and then you're just sitting at home and you're just saying, if I don't get what I want, I'm just going to sit here. I think it works way better if maybe you cannot do it to the maximum of what you really want to do, but at least on the little steps you can take, just take those steps so that it shows initiative. Because this is a trait that even when you go to university, it will help you. Even when you get out of university and go to work and you're trying to convince your boss of something, it works way better when you can tell them that, hey, see, I've done a prototype of it, can we do something bigger? It shows that, oh, you've actually thought about it. And I think for me at the time, I didn't know it, but it really helped eventually when I would then get to moving to Malaysia. It helped in convincing her that actually, yes, I can put my 21-year-old son on a plane and I trust that he can take care of himself, because I had been doing that already for like 4 years on my own. So I think that's part of the thing, that she was deeply frustrated, but it also required that I also took a little bit more responsibility. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much
Yeah.
for that. I think that answers part of the question for me,
Yeah.
because I like it when maybe children or young people try their hands on different things,
Yeah.
but I'm always also in that space of, I don't mind you playing around trying things, but don't put me in your cost.
Yeah. No, that's fair. Yeah, because
Yeah,
you will not always be there as a parent, right? You can only
exactly.
do as much as you can do, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's fair to as we're thinking about our future, I think there's a lot of ideas and
Yeah.
excitement being young, and I think we should make use
Yeah.
of that energy. But at the same time, I think it's also fair to think about, like you mentioned, that their parents being our stakeholders, and all the decision that we make affects them in
Yeah.
one way or another. And I think we need to care about how they feel. And sometimes parents are like any other human, experience fear,
Yeah.
frustration, and worries, as particularly with children, right? There's a Chinese saying that if you live up to 100 years old, your parents will worry about you for
Yes.
99 years. And so it's in their nature to worry and to care for you. I think yeah, I think it's fair that we should be patient with them sometimes. Like you
Yeah.
say, show them, and I love how you approach that with so much love and understanding to your parents, at the same time also achieving your own
Yeah.
objective as well. Yeah. Yeah. So you show us a little bit about like going into university. There was a lot of twist and turn there. And learning has been difficult for you, and as we have already hinted a lot, it comes from the fact that you were experiencing
Yeah.
neurodivergence as part of something that you deal with in your head. What are the yeah, tell us a little bit about what you're experiencing, and how do they affect your learning process as well as your creative
Yeah,
process as well.
so again, it's not so much so from the beginning to the end. It's more of like, always looking back, right? Because in the moment we don't know, right? We're always building, we have this house we are building, but we don't even know how the house is going to look like. But we have a brick, and every single day we put the brick down, right? And I think it's pretty much the same for me,
Mm,
where, growing up, I grew up with just my mom and sister, and, in many regards, again, in the middle of nowhere. So it was a very isolating kind of background I had, where I didn't really have exposure to a lot of people outside. But one thing I've always known is that the
Mm.
the volume in my head has always been very loud. Now, when I was younger, of course, I was very shy. I was very introverted. I still am, but most people don't believe it that I'm like a big introvert right now. But I still am. But at the time, I remember that it's just that the it never stops, right? It's like the noise never stops, and by noise I don't mean like it's just random. I just mean that I'm always getting information all the time. And in fact, this is one of the things that being on the autism spectrum, and not just being ADHD, because being ADHD is actually different from being on the autism spectrum, is where even right now I require some accommodations. Like even at home, I always have like noise canceling headphones. When I sleep, for example, I wear noise canceling loops, which are like this in ear plugs. When I go outside, the world is very loud. Even when I'm at home right now, I can hear everything, right? So I'm very hypersensitive to sound, which is the part that I'm on the spectrum. But the ADHD part was just that, as a kid, I was really impulsive. Like, I remember my mom saying that I got her fired once because I just wouldn't stop crying, because I'm that kind of a baby that I was just really difficult. I mean, at the time they didn't know it, but I was probably overwhelmed or something. So in the neurodivergence world, this is what we call being overwhelmed. So now you take that, where I was in
Mm.
primary school, and in primary school I did really well, right?
Mm.
When I came out of primary school, I was actually one of the top students in Lagos State, which is my state that I grew up in. So I was doing really well, but
Wow.
when I look back upon it, the only reason why I did well was because at the time I had a lesson teacher, Uncle Adolf, who I still have on Facebook till today, because I connect with a lot of people.
I hope he's
Right,
watching
I'll send
this.
it to him definitely. I hope there's a recording on YouTube, because I was so
Yeah,
a
yeah, there
huge shout
is.
out to him, because
Yeah.
growing up I never realized it, but the role he played, and I think this is where education, or the right kind of education, can make the world of a difference, was that at that time he would always have a one-on-one with me every day. I would come back from school and he was like my lesson teacher. He would take me through what I did in school. And because in school most of the time I couldn't process anything, because now I know I was overwhelmed. So there was just too much going on. Kids are loud, and everything is so loud in a primary school. But when I would come back home, he would actually put me through everything. And that was how I was able to be the best student in the state, right? And because for me, I've always found that I'm able to get concepts really quickly. Now, the nice
Mm.
thing of that was that at that stage, it really helped a lot, because maybe many kids, they needed to read. They would go home and do assignments and stuff. I never really did any assignments. The moment I see it, I know it, right? It stays there. But one thing
Mm.
changed was when I went into secondary school, right, or high school, where it was
Mm.
a public secondary school. And I'm not sure if you're very familiar, but public secondary schools in Nigeria are very crowded. So, I went from a class of
Mm.
like maybe 12 students to like a class of like, 40, 50. So automatically I just stopped learning. But, at the time, my mom thought I was fine. Everybody thought I was fine. So nobody really checked on me. And I did not have Uncle Adolf anymore, who was there as someone who I would
Mm.
see every day. So that, because that structure went away, my secondary school was really like a blur. Like I didn't learn anything. I would go to school and I
Mm.
did not know it at the time, but I was so overwhelmed. I didn't learn. Like I couldn't even listen to what the teacher was saying. My mind was always racing. And I was not
Mm.
a loud kid because I was very shy, but I was always in my head.
Yeah.
I love drawing, so I would always draw comics on my book, instead of like listening to anything the teacher was saying. I would draw comics at the time on my paper. I've always loved reading magazines, so I would be reading like a magazine. And my mom is a doctor, so we have lots of books at home. So I would always bring one of those books that have nothing to do with my high school. I would have it in class and I would be reading it. I would read novels. I would devour pretty much everything except what I was supposed to do. So obviously this was why I alluded to it earlier, but this was why I repeated the class, right? I failed an entire grade because I just didn't learn anything. And when I failed, my mom asked me like, "Hey,
Mm.
what is wrong?" And I did not know it at the time that it was because I was struggling a lot with all of these sensory issues, which is what many people who are neurodivergent go
Mhm.
through, right? Is that their brain is so loud and the world is so loud, so that they actually cannot get anything in. So by the time I get home from school, I'm exhausted, but not from the school itself, but from just taking in the world. Like the world was just too much for me. So this would go on, and of course, it would show up in me failing. And when I failed, one thing my mom did was then get me a lesson teacher, which then really helped me because she then went to some of my teachers in school, in high school, and said, "Hey, this is my son. He failed his grade. Can you teach him chemistry, or can you teach him maths, or can you teach him all of this?" And because at the time I was very smart, in primary school, like I said earlier, right, this was great in primary school, but in high school, where you kind of need depth, you need to study, you need to do your assignments. That didn't work anymore, right? So I couldn't just wing it anymore. I couldn't just go to a biology test and I didn't do any study beforehand, or I didn't do any of the tests beforehand, and then go and write the exam. So obviously I was going to fail. So it really helped that my mom got me lesson teachers, and at that time I think that was the only reason why I was able to finish high school. And I think coming to how it felt at the time, especially being a kid in Nigeria, it really sucked. I mean, I'm not going to sugarcoat it, right? Because it felt like I was this really super smart kid who was so in front of everybody, and then suddenly, like, I'm the guy who has run out of fuel, and then everybody has overtaken me on the highway, and then my bonnet is just open there. I'm just waiting for the highway rescue to come and get me, but they're not coming. 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. People who left, their hometown 5 hours ago have already gotten home. I'm still on the highway. So this was pretty much how it felt my entire high school. So I think it was a really tough time in my life where failing indirectly actually helped in a way, because growing up, you have this fear of failure. What if you fail? What if you get a bad grade, or if you get a C, for example, and your parents are really mad at you? And for me, my mom is really mad at me because I was used to getting A's all along. But then you fail an entire grade. So what do you do then, right? And I think because I failed, it kind of took that kind of edge off, right? I'm not sure if it makes sense. It took that kind of, you must not fail. Okay, I failed. Now what? So I think my mom became a little bit more gentler with me, and what would have helped was, understanding the condition that I have, because after all the things I've gone through, I have a younger sister. She's about 2 years younger than me, and when I learned about ADHD and I spoke to her about it about 4 or 5 years ago when I got diagnosed, she has ADHD as well. So it was not like as if it was just me, but for my sister, it was completely different kind of symptoms that she had. But for me, it was completely different as well. So because of that, I would say it was really challenging. But for parents, or for even students watching this, I would say that many things that look like, for example, just sitting down and not doing anything, or for me, it was just being in computers all day. I would literally just be in my room. I would never come out. It looked on the outside like I was just wasting my time, or I was just not taking my life seriously, but it was actually the opposite. I was freaking out all the time. Like, imagine, like, you have like 10 radio channels on at the same time in your head, and then people are telling you that, why can you not listen? And I'm like, what? They're like, why can you not listen to me? And they're screaming at the top of their voices, but I cannot hear anything, right? So I would say there's a lot more care that needs to be given, especially when it's out of the blue, or a child, or you as a student, you've been performing, and all of a sudden you realize that you cannot focus any longer, or it's just so difficult. Things that are so easy for others to pick up, suddenly it's so difficult to you. You might want to have that checked, and you might also, as a parent, want to just, be gentle with your child, to realize that, nobody is trying to be bad. I don't believe there's any inherent badness in any of us, right? I think there's always a reason. It might not be a good reason, but I always believe there's a reason. And, understanding wins more wars than bullets, right? Because at the end of the day, no war has been won because you just kept shooting. No, it's always you come at a table, you sit down, and you understand each other. And I think for me, being able to do all of the creative stuff I did not know it at the time, but that was the only outlet I had to be able to channel all of these noises that I had in my head into doing something. Now, it was not what my mom wanted, so that's the headache she had, but it was something that really helped me just quiet all the noise, and I was able to then use it, but it was really challenging.
Sorry, before you leave that, I would like to ask, because you mentioned when you were speaking that you got diagnosed about 5 years ago. So
Yeah.
I'll put that at 2020, which means
Yes.
something very close. What
Yes.
led to diagnosis? Why did you seek for diagnosis, and how did you deal with the
Well, it was
diagnosis?
very simple. I started having panic attacks, right? So I prior to this, I never knew what panic attacks were, right? Like it's not like I had any knowledge of panic attacks, right? But I just remembered when they announced the lockdown. I believe it was Prime Minister Muhyiddin at the time had announced the lockdown here in Malaysia. And my mom is older now, and my sister at the time, was just in her mid 20s. But I I just broke down with anxiety, so much anxiety, worrying about my mom in Nigeria. At the time here, I was finishing my master's, and, I was just about to get an offer letter for a job that had decided to hire me. So it's like I was sitting down here in the lockdown, and it felt like everything just crashed at the same time. All the worries of home, all of the worries of here in Malaysia, everything just, and I just, I looked and I was crying, but I was not like, bawling or anything, but I just noticed that tears just wouldn't stop flowing. And, my hands were shaking. And, it's later that I'll find out that, oh, this is a panic attack, because I didn't know what panic attacks were. And it became even more frequent, the more I thought about it. And I just realized one day that I just asked myself that, wait, I don't think this is normal. I don't think people experience this normally. Like, and I know people get worried, but I don't think they get worried to the stage that, even the thought of whatever, and their heart feels like it's beating at 100 miles an hour. I felt that even more. And, at the time when I was in university, I had really struggled a lot because, again, I say, like, most times when I'm in class, I'm the kind of student that, I'm the best kind of student you could have as a lecturer, because I would talk to the lecturer throughout the entire class. I love sitting in front. I would talk to the lecturer and everything, but it was very frustrating for my lecturers, because here was this guy who would always talk to them, and, they felt he understood. But then when the results time came, I barely passed, right? And this is, again, if you're watching as a student, you need to make sure that you pass for your visa has to be renewed. You cannot afford to fail. So it was very important that I do not fail. So, for many subjects, I barely scraped by, but for them, it was quite frustrating because, it seemed like I understood what they were saying. I understood the concepts. I would debate, the philosophy of it to them. But come the exams, all of a sudden, I performed really badly. So one of my lecturers, Miss Ong Shumin, very legendary lecturer, because she literally saved my life. I think there was one time where I was really struggling. And I think for me, I had always, had these bouts of depression. And, for some of it, even when I was in Nigeria, I would have all of these suicidal thoughts at the time. And when I came to Malaysia, I think there was a time I was really struggling and I was having those thoughts and they just wouldn't go away. So I went to school, and the only lecturer I could think of at the time was Miss Ong to speak to. And Miss Ong in class was not, a very cuddly type of person. She was not a very friendly type of person. But oddly, she was like the only lecturer that I felt, comfortable to actually talk to, because beneath all her, very harsh surface, she was actually someone that really cared. So I remember going to the IT department in university and, booking some time with her and telling her, like, I need help. I don't know what to do because I just need help. And then she would take me to the psychology department in the university. I would enroll in therapy. She would enroll me in therapy. I would have my first therapy session. So I've been going to therapy a couple of years before. So when I had this panic attack, I just messaged my therapist. I emailed my therapist, and I resumed the sessions again. And while I resumed the sessions, he's the one obviously who told me about panic attacks and everything. And at that time, I was glued to my phone. I couldn't leave my phone. I was, the time, I don't know if people remember now, because people forget. People have fickle memories. But there was the tracker, right, that would show how many people at the time had succumbed to the COVID-19 virus, and they had ranking leaderboards by state, by country. I would, be checking, and Nigeria is a place that doesn't have a lot of data. So I was like, is my mom okay? And my mom is a doctor. She's literally a frontliner, right? And she's older, so I had even more fear. She's in her 60s. What if something happens to her? So at the time, I was just scrolling on Twitter, and I came across a thread that was talking about ADHD. Now, I, again, coming from Nigeria, I never thought anything about ADHD before this. So, but the more I read the thread, the more I was like, wait a minute, like, the more I read it, they were like, wait a minute, is this person in my head? Is this person in my head? Wait, is this person, oh, you have anxiety? I didn't even know that I had anxiety, because I always thought that, oh, I'm just someone who worries a lot. I did not know that it was actually a symptom of, as is medically called, a comorbidity of ADHD or neurodivergence, is that you're also prone to other things such as depression. I didn't know this. I just thought people worried, right? Like, oh, if you don't submit your assignment, you think, oh, the world will end. I just thought everybody felt like this, right? Or if you don't do this, and then, oh, my visa will get revoked. Like, it's just my mind went to the worst case scenario each time. So I would see the thread, I would read it, I would go to the ADHD. There was a link to like do a self assessment, a DSM-5, I believe, a self assessment. I would do the assessment. I'll get my results, and it said, "Oh, you have ADHD, but check with like your, psychiatrist or something." So I just forwarded the results to my email to my therapist, and I said, "Listen, this was at 3, 4 a.m. in the morning. I was like, I took like 5 different ADHD tests. I am not sure what is happening, but it's like these people understand me. Like for the first time in my life, this was the first time I felt like, wow, yeah, I've been understood, because my entire life, my mom never understood me. When I was in Nigeria, nobody understood me because I've always been this kind of strange guy doing all these strange things. So my therapist was like, "Whoa, calm down there, buddy. You cannot diagnose yourself, and I cannot diagnose you because I'm a therapist. I'm not a psychiatrist." So he referred me to the psychiatrist. I then, went through like a very long process with the psychiatrist. And they interviewed my mom. They interviewed, at the time I had a girlfriend. They interviewed her as well. They interviewed my housemate who had known me for like 5 years, 6 years. All just to be able to make sure that it is very conclusive. And at that time, the more I took the test, the more I failed the thing, the more things just made sense. Like, wait, oh, so this is why I'm like this. Oh, this is why I'm like that. So for me, for example, my short-term memory is actually really bad. So if you tell me something right now, I will forget it completely. Like if you tell me, so to my mom, imagine growing up, my mom is like, "Oh, go and buy tomatoes and go and buy yams or whatever." I take the money. Instead of going to buy the yams, I'll go to the game center. I'll play games for 4 hours. I'll come back home. Maybe I'll buy myself a snack, just for good measure. I'll get home. My mom would be, of course, extremely angry, like, and flabbergasted. Like, how? Where is the tomato? How did you? Where is? And obviously, like, it drove her really mad at the time. All these things started making sense, right? Like, even when I was in primary school as well, the fact that there's this thing called gifted child syndrome, which is like, for most neurodivergent people, as kids, they're actually really smart when they are younger, right? But like the older they get, the worse their life outcomes is. So you hear it a lot that you're not living up to your expectation. You see this in different kind of cultures. And for me, I was the epitome of that, which was very weird, because you would think that I was living up to expectations by the fact that all the things I had done. But there are still many areas in my life where, my friends who we went to high school together, most of them had finished high school, university before I even entered university. I would enter university, I would leave university, I would travel across the world to start university again. So for me, my timeline was like all over the place, right? So in many areas, it felt like I was actually very behind, right? It felt like I was catching up. Everybody had already been on their 100-kilometer fast lane, and I'm just on, in my Kanchil, which for those who are not familiar, is like a very budget old car here in Malaysia. Just, trudging along like 10 kilometers per hour and like sputtering along. So it felt like that most of my life. And then the moment like I got the diagnosis and I started reading up to it, I was like, wow, hold on a minute. So this is it. Like I didn't need to, I mean, the process of then unlearning, because I then understood that I was so mean to myself, right? Thinking that, why am I not doing this way? Why am I not so fast? Because I've always been like, I'm not a very fast person. Most of my things take time. Even my career right now that you're seeing it looks very fancy, but I've been doing content creation for 18 years, right? So to many people on the outside, it just looks like as if, oh, I'm just doing YouTube, I'm just doing all these videos, but it's a long journey, right? And maybe so for some people, it will not take as long as that. But for me, it always felt like I was always on this very long arc. And, sometimes the arc just never completes, right? It's just uncompleted. So I have so many uncompleted things in my life, my room was never arranged. My clothes are never folded. As you can see, as a mom, you can understand why my mom would be extremely mad at me. So it felt for a long time that I was always, doing things wrong. I'm always holding it in the wrong hand. I'm always saying the wrong things because, again, impulsiveness is the thing that people think is just in the way you act, but it's in the things you say too. Like I did not know, people say there's a time and place for it. I don't know what a time and place is because reading social cues is one of the things that neurodivergent folks are not good at, especially when you're on the
Very
spectrum as
bad.
well. Right. So I don't know when I should say something. Visitors will come and I'll just tell my mom that, can we not ask them to be going to their house? And my mom is like, shut up, don't say that. So stuff like that. I didn't have any filter. And even right now in Malaysia, even now as a YouTuber, I don't take all the devices. I review phones and all of that, but I don't take all the devices. I don't go to all the events because I don't like it. I only do the things that I like, and it's always been like that. But people don't really respond well to that because people always expect that you just keep quiet and just save face, right? And you just do what everybody else is doing, and that's it. So for me, I found that getting that diagnosis, and then when it was time to get medication, obviously there were so many fears, and even my mom, who is a doctor, was quite scared, because everybody has this kind of reputation about medication will make you feel this way, it will dull your senses, it will dull your creativity, which is what many people think. But I think for me at that stage, it was either having crippling anxiety and panic attacks or trying medication. And I would try medication because at that stage my head felt like it was going to explode. So I tried medication, and it felt like for the first time in my life I had the control to the radio station. Like I could literally control which channels I want to listen to. I have never had that in my entire life. In my entire life, it's just been like there are 10 radios, and someone puts 10 radios around your head and says, listen to it, and you have no choice in the matter. But I take medication and I'm like, wow, I do not want to listen to Fly FM today. I will turn off Fly FM. Or I do not want to listen to Power FM. I will turn off Power FM. I could do that. And I think it was insane because, that was the first part, obviously. The second part of that was realizing that okay, it's not only medication, because many people think it's just medication, but it's actually your environment as well. So that meant that for me, I've always struggled in like a very structured place, a structured workplace, a structured school program, a structured whatever, because I always hear this all the time: if we make an exception for you, then we have to do it for everybody else, because the things you're asking me for, I cannot do it for you. I've always heard this my entire life, right? Because again, I'm special needs. That's why I've always needed special needs, right? Which is crazy because that's what special needs are, right? So I think there's still a lot more to be done when it comes to like accommodation, not from a punitive point of view, like, oh, if we do it for you, then we cannot give it to anybody, so we won't do it for you. But instead of that, it's realizing that, all kids are not the same. And if you're watching this right now, whether as a student or even as a parent, you realize that just because you are different does not mean that you are bad, because many times in a system when you're different, it's always conformity, right? And for me, for many years, it's something I really struggled against. And when I then realized that, it took me a while, I'm still in the process of realizing that, oh, so there are certain environments that I thrive and there are certain environments that I don't thrive, right? So actually, I can thrive in a system. I'm someone who, in fact, I think in systems. Like when I was 11 years old, everything that I have right now is everything that I imagined as an 11-year-old. I told people, nobody believed me, but I could imagine it because, again, I never stopped thinking, right? But the problem is that when I am now put into a system and said, okay, we want you in this system, let's say employment, for example, right? I've been employed here in Malaysia 3 times. I've held 3 jobs here in Malaysia. And each time, people have said, hey, we love your stuff. We love how creative you are. And then when I get into the role, one was as the content lead for a startup here. Another one was as a regional Southeast Asia content and PR manager. And another one was also as a content lead. And each time I say, okay, so this is what I want to do. They're like, oh, no, but not like that. We cannot do that. Oh, yeah, we don't want you to be creative like that. Which to me, it doesn't like, it's like how, we have a saying in Yoruba.
It's a little bit of
Yeah,
mismatch, yeah.
my brain cannot tahan, as we say here in Malaysia. I cannot comprehend it,
It's being more Malaysian each day
Oh,
right
you
now.
know what I say, like I cannot, like I really can't, right? And because of that, people get mad, right? Your managers get mad, your CEO gets mad. We just want you to do this. But the way I got here was not by doing anything anybody told me to do. I have never done that in my life. Even when I was in Nigeria under my mom, who was, this iron lady, I never did that. So I'm not going to start doing that now. And the reason why I'm so creative is because I don't do that. I am so very unfiltered, and that's why I can do things that are not regular and common, right? So I then found out that, okay, apart from medication, also it helps to have an environment that really works for me, right? Which meant that, okay, maybe traditional employment or at least traditional employers wouldn't really work for me. And I think that's one of the hardest decisions of realizing that, wow, because I really like working. I really like working with people. I really like making stuff come to life. I am a planner, so I have all these complex plans. And, when I come in, I have this architecture. I have the way of making stuff work because I'm a big picture guy. I can see things on a very high abstract level. But then on a day to day, people just they understand that there's a vision. It's like saying, we will have flying cars by 2030 or 2025. Okay, we're in 2025 now, but there are no flying cars, right? Because most people, they just have it as an abstract ideal. Yeah, we will have flying cars, but there are things you need to do to get to a stage where you can make flying cars. And I think the story of China is one, and maybe there are students from China watching right now where, there's been a period of time where there's been a huge economic development. It's because there are things that, if we want to be a developed economy by this year, there are things we need to do, right? We need to sort out, maybe our healthcare system, our roads, our education. We need to do all of these things so that we can be there. So for me, I've always been a person that I work backwards. I look at what I want and then I just work backwards. Okay, what do I need to do to get it? And I just do that, which is why I don't really mind that it takes me 10 years or 20 years. It doesn't really matter. In fact, I have this grand thesis that I have 3 quarters in life. So 0 to 30, 30 to 60, and 60 to 90. So when I was 11 years old, I had 19 years. So I could figure it out, right? And now that I'm in my mid 30s, I still have 25 plus years to go. So because of that, environment is also another thing that has really helped, is in realizing that, so I don't really work in a structured environment, so I don't do that anymore. And even for me, you would think I'm my own employer, I do my own things, I hold that ideal even with myself. So that means that, if I get a new phone,
Yeah.
I don't really like it. I don't do it, even though it might be from Apple or Samsung or whatever it is, I just don't do it because I realize that it goes against sort of the core tenet that I have, which is that I only let curiosity lead. Because again, coming to the start of this, I talked about narratives, and one of the narratives I have told myself is that I'm awesome, right? And what do awesome people do? They only do awesome things, right? And if I want to do something and it's not awesome, I ask myself, like, is this something I really want to do? And I say no, because what we do in this house is we do awesome things. And if it's less than awesome, that means we're not doing it. That also means that, yeah, we are not. So, and again, coming back to what I said earlier when you asked me the question, Dr. Bossede, about convincing parents, I think even more difficult is convincing yourself, right? Which is that you also have to show yourself. You don't tell yourself that you are awesome. It's every opportunity that you are given in every, even in the most littlest of situations, right? Where you could try a little harder. You know that you could, do 10% more, 20% more. You know that, this thing is something you really want, but you maybe try to convince yourself that, no lah, I don't want it lah, it's okay, and never mind. Like, no, it's like you stand up, and in those moments, they are really tiny. It doesn't feel like much, but in those tiny moments, they really change everything. Like me being here right now, literally, it's just from deciding that I saw, Dr. Bossede and her husband on the road, and I was like, hey, can I help you this morning? And that's how I'm here today. It's tiny moments. Those tiny moments change entire timelines.
Wow.
And I think for me, I've always been able to see timelines. So it's like I can see, it's like when you're playing a video game and there's a option, 3 different dialogue options. You choose one and then you see the character say, oh, that's a wrong choice. For me, I see that in real life. I see where people, or even myself, I make a wrong decision and I'm like, man, I should have talked to that person. So I don't let it get there, right? I let curiosity lead me, right? I'm always like, I would rather ask for forgiveness than permission. And of course, the caveat to that is that you don't do anything illegal. But most times, no, really, it's very important.
Yeah.
But I've realized that most times, especially at the age that you are at right now, you have your entire lives ahead of you. And because you have your entire lives ahead of you, actually, things will not end if you make a few mistakes. And even me, right, I failed in school. I failed in my first university try that I did, and even my second university, a 3-year degree, I did it in about 5 years or 6 years, and all of that. But it's okay, the time will pass anyway, right? And I think more important than that, right now, I am closest as I've ever been to my mom, because I don't need to tell her anything. She can see it. She can see my YouTube channel. She can see all the things I'm doing. She can see how I even talk to her. Like, I'm no longer just her son. I'm her friend. So whenever there's anything going on at home, and she's angry, she'll call me because she knows that I'll listen to her. I'm just going to listen to her like I would listen to a friend, because I also realize that our parents, we think of them as this very abstract people who are not really people. They're just our parents and that's it, right? But they are people too. They have goals, they have dreams, they have things that they're sad about. And even you as a child, you'll start to realize the older you get that you can be that for them as well. You can be their friend as well. You can, not in trying to do anything for them, but by doing things for yourself, it gives you the kind of confidence to be able to know that, okay, I will be there for my parents, because money they can get from anywhere, but being their child, they cannot simply go to the market and buy it. You get me?
Yeah, thank you. That's a really really amazing, you know, uh, yeah, just your story itself, like so much to unpack, and so much obstacles to overcome as well. But it is also those obstacles that made you who you are,
Yeah,
because you learn from your mistakes. You learn from what's happening to you. You're also I love the fact that you're quite in check with how your body is reacting to certain situations, and you're paying attention on uh, how your body just sends you these signals, because like panic attacks that you experience, right? I don't think a lot of people knows that, hey, this is actually a panic attack, and you
yeah,
actually ask yourself questions like, why do I react that way?
yeah,
And I think it's important, for us to pay attention to some of the ways that our body works and our mind works. And as parents, I'm hoping that you also take this, and help your children explore and understand themselves a little bit better. um, and I uh, and I reaffirm the fact that you need professional help on these things. You can't self-diagnose. I'm
yeah.
I'm glad that your therapist tell you, hey, you can't do this on your
Yeah,
own.
no, because I was like, ah,
And yeah, yeah. And then he's like, okay, let's point you to the professional who can tell you exactly what it is. And I'm so glad you went through that. And this might be quite helpful for some people who are probably possibly going through something similar what you are, and would begin to seek professional help. And this is something that we encourage as well.
yeah,
I just want to delve. I think we have the last a few minutes, but I really want to like dive a little bit into your YouTuber career, your
yeah.
content creating uh, career, right? Like what are some of the things, or your education, um, uh, yeah, how do you get there? And in a sense that, like, what, um maybe my question would be more on, is there any safety net for you? Like, if certain things fails, is there like contingency, or things that, or the certain skills that you can fall back on? How would you advise somebody who was aspire to be a YouTuber?
Okay, so I think the primary advice, and can I have the slides on for this because I actually did prepare just one
Yeah.
slide. And I think one of the biggest points here when it comes to safety net is that in pursuit of all the things I'm doing right now, so on this
Mm,
journey, right, all the things that I've learned along the way have actually helped, and I think it helped when I came to Malaysia. I think that was one of the biggest things that really helped me a lot because I got this advice from this Nigerian guy who was here at the time, and when I was in Nigeria, I was chatting with him on Facebook, and I was asking him like, how is Malaysia, because I'd been introduced to at the time I was doing radio. I had a radio show in Lagos. I was doing a radio show, so my co-host at the time had introduced me to his friend who was a Nigerian living in Malaysia. So I remember the guy Kayode Muyibi telling me like, when you come to Malaysia, Emmanuel, the one thing I want you to do is I want you to really immerse yourself. And I think this is the advice I would also, not as even a contingency plan, but as the main plan, right? It's like immersion, which means that anywhere that you are, because you don't know where you're going to end up, you really need to immerse yourself wherever it is you are. So I think on screen right now you can see when I came to campus, I was very active. Me who is not really a very active person when I was in Nigeria, I never played football a day in my life in Nigeria. The photo there with all our yellow jerseys. I joined the IT football team. Of course, we're all nerds, but we managed to come second, which for us was our first. And I joined Model United Nations, which is me in the fancy dapper suit right there, which was a new experience for me. I'd never done that before as someone who doesn't even speak back home. On the top right there, my friends and I, in one of the electives I had taken with the business department, so I was IT department, there was the business department. We were talking and they were like, hey, we don't have like a volunteer society in our university. So me, along with three of my friends, we actually created the Help University Volunteer Society, where we would go volunteer volunteer at different homes, at different activities, and all of these things. And the bottom left was, I had a lot of friends in hostel. So this was from one of my birthdays where they threw a surprise for me. I came to my room and they had gotten the building manager to open my room for them so that they could surprise me, all of them. And all of this is all to say that you really have to be where you are and you have to embrace the experiences, especially if you're planning on traveling outside your country, right? Because when you travel outside your country, the trap many people fall into is that they want to be comfortable, which I understand. They want to eat their food from their country, they want to only talk to their people from their country. But I think one of the advice that has really helped me is really immerse yourself. Like, one thing I learned was that, coming from Nigeria, right? Maybe there were some rules in Nigeria of things you can do, things you cannot do. And even here as a Malaysian, right? There are the different races, there are all the stereotypes of what a race can do, all a race cannot do. But when I come here as a Nigerian, sure, now I have this stereotype as a Nigerian, which I never had before. But the upside of that is that all the stereotypes I had when I was in Nigeria, I no longer have them. So that meant that because I only have this label of Nigerian, and at the time Nigerians did not have the best of kind of PR at the time, right? But one thing I did was, when I had been blogging back home in Nigeria, I came to Malaysia. I decided that, okay, I was very, 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 into school my first year, because that's also important again for your visas. Even though you have to do all of this, even for me, I made sure that I understood the system, right? So I understood that, okay, you need to take at least a minimum of 2 subjects per semester. You need to have 100 or 80 to 90, I would say 90% attendance, so you cannot miss classes. So all of these things were things that I really understood. And when I started my channel, because I was like, I want to do something else, because I understood that, okay, I have to make sure that I take at least the minimum subjects that are required of me for my requirements for immigration, right? I have to make sure that I attend all of the classes. So one thing I'll do was that, I'll talk to my lecturers. I'll tell them that, hey, I'm not just a student, I'm also trying to do this content creation thing. So I would appreciate it during class if you really tell me and look at me a part of the curriculum that I should look into. I'll tell them this because, many of us, again, we think our parents, we think teachers, they're just this, people you cannot talk to. They're people, you have to be scared, but you don't have to be scared, actually, because they're there for you. Your parents are paying money, they're sending you to study because they care for you. It's not the opposite way around. Like, your parents don't hate you, your teachers don't hate you. And I think for me, it's one thing I really embraced. So I'll talk to my teachers, right? Even for the subjects that I was failing, I'll still talk to them like, okay, I failed your class, so what do I need to do this? They're like, yeah, Emmanuel, you need to study hard. I say, I know. If I cannot study as hard as you want me to, what else do you want me to? So it was a conversation. So because of that, and because of this background I had built of, going out, of trying things in the campus and everything, when I then said I was going to, start my YouTube channel, which was, this video was literally my first YouTube video that I made in 2014. So that was 11 odd years ago. When I decided to do that, I could actually do what? I could count on all these relationships that I had built. So the camera I shot this with was not even my camera. One of the girls in this photo, it was her camera. I texted her at like 1 a.m. in the morning and I said, hey, Shruti, can I borrow your camera? She was like, okay. I mean, that's strange, but okay. But she loaned me, the event I even went to, like the first video I made, I went to buy a laptop. The guy who followed me there was the guy who helped me shoot the video. And all of this, again, when we talk about contingency plan, is that the things I've learned in making content, right? Being able to manage different stakeholders, which we call production, right? Being able to do pre-production and all of this are skills that will also help you in life, which means that even if I were not doing content creation, I still have the ability to rally people. I still have the ability to, find out what people want and talk to them about it. And even if someone tells me no, I have the ability to say, okay, I know you said no, but can we meet somewhere, in the middle? It's okay if I will do more than you will do for me. It's okay, because again, you need to be able to show that, you can do something. And I think for me, how did I get my start in the Malaysian tech media here? I literally just went to Facebook. I had like a list. It was 100 over names of different brands, of different creators. And I just messaged them, Facebook message. Because at the time, Facebook was really popular. There was no like other, for people who are wondering, Facebook? At the time, Facebook was like a major social media, okay? Even though you might not believe it right now. But I would just go and I would message on Facebook. And I messaged over 100 different brands and people and creators. Only one person replied to me. One. right? This guy Warren from KO Gadget Guy, he's a tech YouTuber. He's one of the original tech YouTubers in Malaysia. He said, "Hey, let's have coffee." I don't even drink coffee. I cannot even afford coffee at the time. But I said, "Yeah, sure. Can you come to my hostel? Because that was the only place that I didn't know anywhere else. I lived on the school hostel, so where else am I going to go?" So he came to the hostel. We spoke, and he said, "Don't worry, I will take you to events." He took me to my first event, which was a Xiaomi event, and from there I started getting more invites from different brands, and that was how I got my start. And everything that I've told you is still the same thing, which is that immersion. Like, wherever it is you decide to travel to, or your parents send you to, you cannot just go there and be like, "Oh, these people are different, or the food is different, or the weather is different." No, you really have to give it a chance, and you don't know what will come out of it. And for me it was content, but for you it might not be content creation. You might think it's content creation. You get there and you realize that, oh, actually maybe it's not content creation. Maybe it's writing, right? Maybe you like writing, maybe you like planning, maybe you are someone who you like doing something else that is not just being in front of the camera, because there is space for everyone, right? So, and all of those things, you learn the skills you pick up along the way. So for me, writing, being able to convince people, because again, when I make a video, I have to convince someone to click on the video. I have to convince them to stay on the video. I have to convince them to subscribe. I have to convince, brands when I give them a campaign. So I just finished a campaign with Samsung last week. I have to convince Samsung, like, hey, I'm worthy of you giving me however much and giving me this product to, like, talk about it and share it with my audience, right? So all of these skills are skills that I have picked up while making content. And I think this was like my first video I ever made. It was of the laptop, and that was the receipt at the time. And this was my first ever video set, where I say set, but it was just my chair in my hostel room. You don't see it, but on the right side is my roommate's bed, because this was literally my corner of the room. But again, don't think that, again, we have this saying that don't compare your 0% to another person's 100%, right? We have this thing where you see YouTubers or you see people doing all these big things, and you think, this is what this is, if I'm not doing it the way they're doing it, then I'm doing it wrong. I want to tell you that I also started from my hostel, where the mic is not mine, the camera was not mine, the background was this blue board that came with every room, where you put your sticky notes, your lecture, whatever notes. That was what I used as my video background at the time. So, it doesn't matter. You use what you have, because again, the end is not always indicative of the beginning. Just because you are not there yet does not mean you will not be there. And I would eventually go on, of course, to I've worked with over 120 brands. I've done campaigns with you name it, the big brands: Samsung, Xiaomi, Acer. I've almost I've been on different talks, not just this one. iFlix, for those who still remember, which was like a streaming service here in Malaysia. I was one of their speakers once upon a time. I would go to YouTube Malaysia, not just YouTube Nigeria, where I started, which was a huge circle back moment. And all of those things, all from just, doing things just little by little. And I'm a huge proponent in, one day at a time. Like, you cannot, like my mom would say, Rome wasn't built in a day. So as when you're young, you're kind of impatient. You want everything right now, right now, right now. So I'll tell you, as someone who has been there, that it doesn't come right now. It's there is nothing, then it's slowly, then it's all at once. And when it come all at once, if you have not done all the preparation you should have done when it was slowly, if you've not done all the preparation you should have done where there was nothing, when it comes all at once, you'll be so overwhelmed that you will not be able to do anything, actually. So if I
Wow.
didn't do everything that I was supposed to do, everything that I could learn and everything, and then I got a campaign from Samsung, and they're like, okay, we're going to put your videos in all our stores, and we're going to do all of this, and it's like, if I had not done all the things that I could actually do when everybody was watching, I would not be able to do it at that level, right? So I would say, like, the whatever level you are at. Again, remember, I started from college, where I was just doing stuff in college, and now I'm doing stuff on a much bigger scale. But it's the same thing, right? It's always has been the same, which is just, you show up, you do what you're supposed to do, you contribute if you're in a group. You don't look at it like, oh, it's beneath me. We don't do things like that in my country, so I'm not going to do that here. No, you put all of that aside and you do what you can. And eventually it's like, things click, and it looks like it's all of a sudden, but it's not all of a sudden. It has taken all the preparation and everything. And does that answer your question? Again, you asked about contingency plan, and my answer is like, the contingency is that everything you've done will make sure that you are always employable, no matter where you go. No matter what
Yeah.
organization I like to go right now, I will still have skills that I'll be able to apply there, even if I was not making videos.
Yeah. Some of the gold nuggets that I picked up along the way was the fact that even though you mentioned that you struggle at school, you struggle at learning the conventional way, but it's interesting that you stayed in university, and through the university you grind through it as well, even though you're not doing conventionally well.
Yeah,
And you were able to like still have conversation with your lecturers, and still negotiate your way, that in a way that you find success that are very unique to your own. And the fact that in university you were able to find networks of friends and people who are actually very supportive in your journey. For
yeah,
example, this lady who was willing to loan you a camera that kickstarted everything,
yeah,
your first very video. I think these are precious friendship and network that are that you probably would not find anywhere else, because
yeah,
I think university is such a unique place of exchange
yeah,
of ideas, of
yeah.
encouraging new creative pathways and network of friends that stay with you until yeah, for a long time. And
And
this
from
is
all
why,
across the world, right? Sorry to interrupt you. And that's the
yeah,
advantage if you are actually deciding to travel outside your country. Is one of the advantages that you have friends from. I can literally be in Kazakhstan tomorrow, and I have 10 friends there who will invite me into their house. And I think this is one experience that you only get when you immerse yourself in university life, especially as a foreign student. Is you can meet people from all over the world, and it's like wow. I never even knew this country existed, and now they say, anytime you land in my country, call me, and it's like you will never
yeah.
get this experience anywhere else.
Yeah, and you're basically investing not just money and your time as well into building network and support system like this. And a university could be a really good place to do
Yeah,
so, and very
100%.
unique. And everyone is so focused on figuring out a pathway of their own, and there's great exchange of ideas. Like most people, like a lot of conversation revolves around like, hey, this guy who's been really successful millionaire is a school dropout as well. But
Yeah,
they're also not realizing when they drop out of school, they were in school, and a lot
yeah,
of the connections they were able to build were in
yes,
school. You know,
yeah,
and in your case, it's a great thing. And so, uh, and for students who are thinking to be a YouTuber, uh, I think all of us would still encourage you, do not abandon your education, do not abandon the opportunity for an
yeah,
higher education for a dream of YouTuber,
yeah,
because I think it's a launching platform, and it's
yeah,
going to have treasures
yeah.
that could help launch your YouTuber career in ways that not
Yeah.
having it would not be able to.
Yeah, I mean, I
Yeah.
would say the first job I got here in Malaysia, right? So, because everybody tells you, especially as a foreign student here in Malaysia, especially coming from Nigeria, people tell you about how difficult it is to get a job. They tell you about, all of this. And I got my job, I think, a year before I finished college. And why did I get my job a year before I finished college? Because I was not even looking for a job. And I think this is the part that many people don't realize. Like you said, it's the connections, right? So my housemate at the time, it was this guy who was here on a scholarship, like basketball scholarship in the same university. He's Nigerian as well. And he would always, every weekend he would play a weekend league, right? Which it
Mm.
happens a lot here in Malaysia, right? So every time he would go to the league, I would just follow him with my camera and I would just take photos of him, because he's my friend, he's my housemate. And at the time, I was still practicing how to, like, take photos.
Mm.
So the person who runs the league actually, I think he noticed me. He noticed that I was always coming every weekend. I was always taking photos. I post the photos, I'll tag them in the photos. I'll post the photos, I'll tag them in the photos. So I never thought anything of it. And then I think 6 months later, he would message me. At the time, I was doing my internship, so I had like about a year to go, and I did my internship. And he asked me, "Hey, can you meet up?" And I was like, "That's weird. Like, I don't play basketball. Like, why does this guy who runs the basketball league wants to talk to me? I don't even watch basketball. I don't know anything about basketball." So I said, "Yeah, sure, but I'm interning at that time in Ara Damansara." So I said, "I'm in Ara Damansara. I have lunch break 1 hour. So if you can do it in 1 hour, that's great." He's like, "I only need 10 minutes." I was like, "10 minutes? What is this guy saying?" But I met up with him at Evolve Mall there. We went to the food court, and at the food court, he told me that, "Listen, I've seen you around. I actually checked out your stuff. I then found out that you had a YouTube channel, and I'm starting my company where I need a head of content. And we're going to be doing all this basketball content, and we're going to be doing all of this. And I've seen the kind of shots you take, and I really like your work. So when you finish your university, do you think you can come and work for me? And that was my first job, literally. Like even before I finished university, I already
Wow.
got my job. And I think that's
Yeah.
what I keep saying, right? Like you said, like it's like you don't even know that people are watching you.
Yeah.
And I think university is such a great launch pad because you can afford to like experiment a lot. Because what do you have
Mm.
to lose? Like your parents are sending you money, they might not like it, but they will send it to you because they love you actually. So, what do you have to lose? All the societies in this uni, all the departments, join as much as you can, enjoy campus life as much as you can because the things you do there, you don't know it, but people are actually watching. And if you
Yeah.
are as a content creator who is putting it out there, you don't know who is watching because I've gotten so many opportunities that I did not even know that like these are not people that are subscribed to me or they even mentioned to me, but
Mm.
suddenly I'm there. And then maybe months later or even years, they tell me like, oh yeah, no, I only got you because I actually checked out your stuff and I really liked it. And it's not even
Yeah.
related. That was what convinced them, you know?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your journey. I think it must be really encouraging for anyone who aspires to content creation and you being a YouTuber. It's a lot of young children, young kids, and young students aspiration, and I think it's a aspiration that's worth pursuing. And but yet in that pathway of pursuing this creativity career, universities also still plays a very important role. And
Yes,
yeah,
yes,
and
for
know, as
sure.
such, we would love to encourage you to seek out Arrow's education to see what are some of the pathway that can help you as well, being able to admit yourself into prestigious overseas universities and help to broaden your mind and your perspective and also help to spark creativity in ways that are very unique to you. And with this, I would love to thank you, Captain Awesome, Emmanuel,
Uh,
for joining us. Yeah, sorry, Dr. Vasedi, you have something else
okay,
to?
so I think, sorry, because I think this is the first time we have actually overshot our
Yeah,
usual 1 hour.
really
This is
overshot.
But
Yeah.
this
I
is my
guess
life. This is very common in my life. Like I'm a yapper. I love to
it
talk.
couldn't be helped. But I think for the, how do I want to put it now? It will be unfair to our audience
Mm.
because today they are looking at, okay, if I want to start a YouTube career, then
Yes,
this is the session for me. So
yes.
before we leave, actually I have a question someone has sent in.
Okay.
We'll get to that later. But before then, I would like you to speak to, okay, I want to start, or I am looking at a career as a
Yes.
YouTuber or as a content creator or any one of these. There are no universities offering courses to train you as a content creator or YouTuber. So it's more like you being self-taught
Yeah.
and finding your way around. So for people in that space, what are your what advice do you have? What kind of maybe programs or courses can they get themselves into that can help prepare them? What are the skills that they need to own? What are the the main things?
Yeah.
Maybe main gadgets that they need to maybe think about owning and all that. So that space, can you please speak to that for the sake of our audience?
Yes. So 3 words. In fact, I thought of this before you even asked the question, right? Let curiosity lead. And I think this is one advice that not only speaks to YouTube, but anything in general. But for YouTube or content creation in general, we are at the age, especially now with AI, with where anybody can create anything, which again might be scary in another completely different way. But one thing that I've always found that people can always relate to is they can always relate to someone who is just being themselves, right? And we see this all the time, right? Whether it's positive, whether it's negative, whether it's someone going viral for being this person on the street who is just disturbing everybody, or the opposite where they're helping someone. But we've always as human beings gravitated towards people that do things just with a earnestness and authenticity, right? And I would say for YouTube as a career, you're right. There's not in many universities a course you can really do. So, looking for a course to do will not really help as much as just making sure that whatever videos you decide to do, you are making it about something that you care about. And in this case, it really will have to be a very personal thing. And I think for me, if you look at my journey of where I've come from when I was in Nigeria, where I was this nerd who was always, in the books, and then I found technology and I went into technology, and then people kept asking me, so I started telling them, and then before you know it, I had this career as someone who is blogging, and then I did radio, and now I'm doing YouTube. The core of it has never changed. The core of it has always been that I've always cared about technology, and I love reading manuals. That's my secret. My secret is that, every time there's a new product, right? Almost nobody like reads the manuals, right? If you buy a new phone, for example, you open everything and then nobody reads the manuals. I read the manuals. And because I read the manuals, I know what the capabilities of the products are, right? Because I just have a passion for like finding how things work. And I think that's the core of it, right? And because I have that passion for finding out how things work, it then became my learning process was then about being able to tell people in a way that is easy for them to understand, because many of these things are complex. 50 megapixel camera. What does that mean, right? Does it take good photos or does it not take good photos, right? So it then becomes, now that's the part you will have to learn. And for this, the only way you can really be able to learn this is volume, right? Which means that I've made in my entire career over 2,000 videos, right? Which means that every single video that I have uploaded has taught me something. Every single time I've uploaded a video, it has taught me something. And the more you do it, the more you're able to, it's like a feedback loop, right? It's like the more you're able to be like, oh, wow, the first time I made a video, it was 1 hour long. And that 1 hour long video, I just rambled for like 50 minutes, right? Then you realize the importance of writing, right? How important writing is, and how, again, to the parents on here, I'm sure you'll be very happy to learn this, but this is why school is important, right? Because in school, they actually teach you these things, right? They teach you how to write. They teach you, present tense and past tense and structure and sentences and all of those things. And that's all I do, right? All I do is being able to present my argument. And when you're writing your essays in university, sure, it's a lot more formal, but it's the same thing I'm doing when I'm making a YouTube video, which is that, I have my hook, which is usually like your introduction to the topic. Then you have your structure of like, okay, what is the main thing? What is the next thing? What is the wrap up or payoff to the audience who is watching, right? So all of these things are also important, which is why, again, like they've mentioned, I also reiterated, like, getting that basic foundation is also really important, because for creators who don't have it, I find they struggle to make it at the top, right? Because it's, for example, Samsung has a campaign and they say, oh, we want a campaign where we have our AI in our phones, which was the last campaign I just got last week, right? We have this AI in our phone called Galaxy AI, which can help people do this, but it's very technical. How can you make it in a way that people can understand, right? And if you're someone who has not built on the basics of being able to understand things on just a very fundamental level, you will not be able to do that. So when it comes to this career, to make it really, really simple, let curiosity lead. So make videos about the things you care about. And it's okay if you don't know what you care about. This is why you have the space and time, especially when you're in university, to experiment a lot, to run as many experiments as you like. You want to do beauty, do beauty. You want to do fashion, do fashion. You want to do tech, there is no limits, right? But the moment you find that thing that you're like, wow, I could talk about this thing for hours, then just go full on in it. And when you go full on in it, it's just always about just doing it a little bit better each time, doing it a little bit better each time. And I would say the third and most important critical component of this, because I think this is where a lot of people really stumble, is publish your work. Because many people think, oh, it's not good enough. Oh, my video, I have the vision in my head, but then I make it and it's so crap. But publish it, because I can definitely tell you that there are some things you can only meet yourself where you are. You cannot be more than where you are at the moment. So for me, there was this time I had a campaign with Asus. I think it was about 9 years ago. And in my head, I had the kind of video I wanted to make, but my skills and my crew and my knowledge just wasn't good enough. And then years later, so that was last year, I had the similar kind of campaign with Xiaomi. And when I made that campaign, it was the same idea I had 9 years ago, but I could execute it so much better. because I was now at a much better place. So you will not lose your chance. The chance and opportunity would always come. So I hope I've been able to kind of answer some of the your questions you had there.
Thank you very much for that. So the question that someone sent in
Yes.
from the audience is, the person said, as someone passionate about content creation,
Yeah.
talking about him or herself,
Yeah.
with a background in multimedia education,
Yeah.
what advice would you give to someone like me looking for mentorship and insight into your journey?
Well, the biggest one will be to publish your work because, again, show, like I've been saying, don't tell. And mentorship is great in the sense that, listening to talks like this or listening to people, but there's only a limit that can go because, again, mentorship and all of this is still a form of telling and it's not showing, which means that if you, for example, wanted my advice, right, personally about, let's say, your content creation journey, it helps a whole lot more if you already have a YouTube channel that you've been actively posting to. If you contact me, for example, and send me an email and you say, hey, listen, this is my channel, this is what I've been doing. What advice do you have for me? It's so much more easier for me to watch your backlog, see the parts that, okay, maybe this part you're struggling, okay, maybe this part I can save you the stress and I can give you some of my insights. It's so much more easier for me to do that as opposed to when you have nothing, when you want me to tell you, like from the beginning, okay, you go, you buy this camera or you buy this lens or you buy this editor. Like, that is so much more difficult, I would say, because you are asking someone else to do stuff that you can only show. So, which is why I'm a huge proponent of showing instead of telling, so that when it comes to then people like me or people that are in a position of, someone who has been doing it for a while, and you get in touch with someone like me, I can help you so much better if you've actually been doing something. There's something you have to show me, right? It's so much better. So the advice I would have to this person who asked this question, it's a fantastic question, is that just publish more of your work. It doesn't matter how bad it is. It doesn't matter if you think the quality is bad, if you think it's not up to standard. I can tell you for certain, as someone who has been doing this for 18 years, I will not look down upon it. In fact, if anything, it tells me that you are actually serious and you've taken responsibility. And because of that, there's a whole lot more that I can do for you. In fact, I will root for you because I know that I've been where you are, right? A student who was trying to figure it out, who was trying to do things and, needed one person out of 100 people I emailed, I messaged on Facebook to reply to me, right? I'll be that one person for you. But you also need to do something and you also need to have shown that you are doing something, because that means that, oh, I'm not going to waste my time on this person who will message me, sorry, can you be my mentor? Okay, I mentor you, and then what? You don't upload. But I mean, even though I am very busy and everything, this month I've uploaded about 17 videos. Last month I uploaded 28 videos, right? Like, so I am not sitting down also waiting for anything, right? So I would say it helps to just do as much as you can. It doesn't matter, you get a few friends. I remember the first iPhone I reviewed, I couldn't afford an iPhone. So I borrowed my friend's iPhone 6S at the time. I bought him food in the cafeteria while he was sitting there in the cafeteria. I shot the hands-on video next to him in the cafeteria because he cannot let his iPhone go. And that was my iPhone video. So again, just get creative. These things are not as, they're not as insurmountable as you think, because again, if you are looking at someone like me, for example, it looks like, wow, I'm so far ahead. I'm not, because everybody's journey is not comparative. Your journey is your journey. Your things you do are for yourself. Nobody can take that away from you. So you do that, and it becomes so much easier to get all the help. In fact, people will be tripping over themselves to help you. I can tell you that for sure.
Thank you very much. Over
Yes.
to you, Joash.
Yeah, thank you for answering our audience's question, and also actually providing a tangible pathway that people can actually try on. And it does seems like not fearing failure, not
Yeah.
fearing rejection and humiliation, but be humble enough to learn and to pick up things and to ask people
Yeah.
for favors, for help, actually does launch your career, and it's something that we want to take away from today. And we'd like to thank you, Captain Awesome, for joining us on a professional roundtable, the longest one we've ever done, but it's because it's
Let's
simply
go.
so good to talk with you. And we'll yeah, we'll want to hear more from you. Maybe tell us a little bit about your social media so we can check you out, and shout out to you as well. How can we look at your content?
Okay, so on YouTube, which is primarily where I upload, the name of my channel is Geekception. So GeekCeption.
Mhm.
And how that came about is Inception, the movie where you dream and then you dream in the dream and dream. So I'm basically like that, but for tech. Like I'm a geek and then
Mhm.
I'm a geek in a geek and I'm a geek in a geek and I'm a geek in a geek. So that's Geekception, which is where you can primarily find me posting videos every week. And on social media, I am Captain Awesome. So you can just search for that. That comes out as well. And yeah, that's pretty much it. If you're a student watching right now and you need any help, provided you are active, so this is the condition because I definitely have conditions. Provided you're active and you're publishing your work, send me an email, geekception@gmail.com, and I will most happily, look over anything you want and give you any kind of help you will need. But it will require things that you can only show me. And yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much, Captain Awesome.
Yes,
And
it's been a
thank you
pleasure.
all. Yeah, yeah, great privilege to talk to you. And would like to thank all of you for tuning in and watching today. And to find out more about what Arrows Education do, visit us on arrowstransactions.com or on all on social media on Arrows Education. And with that, I would like to say good night and thank you for tuning in.